Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for watching my video. I am going to share a word with you that I really like a lot. The definition of it, where we get it from, and it's not an uncommon word. You may use it. If you don't use it, you probably read it somewhere. It's commonly used in writing. I don't hear people say it that much, but the word is laconic. Laconic. It's spelled Laconic, and it means expressing much by saying little. A lot of people mistakenly define this word as by being terse, just not talkative, not using very many words, but it's actually a little bit deeper than that. It's expressing much by saying little. In other words, you may say little, but you've actually conveyed quite a bit. Now, usually you're conveying a perception. The people who are on the other end of all this, they don't know what you're thinking because you're not talking a lot, and that's the power in this word. Is laconic. Is the fact that you are not saying much. So there's a lot actually being expressed. It's not just not speaking a lot. It's not just not being talkative. Where we get this word is from the Greek Spartans. Laconia is south of Greece, and it's a general area of Spartan territory. And the Spartans were known for not being, well, they were known for being very short with their words. They did convey much by saying very little. A really good example of this is when Philip of Macedon sent a message to the Spartans and said, "If I have to enter Laconia, I will level it to the ground. If I have to enter Laconia, I will level it to the ground." The response of the magistrates in Laconia was simply, if. Now, that says a lot. Here's what this does, and it's really good. This is really good advice. And what the power in being laconic is that you upset the balance of a verbal, the intentions of a verbal onslaught. When somebody approaches you with a threat and they're just combative in their nature, there's a certain pitch and a certain level of emotion that they expect you to equally respond to. They rely upon it. A picture of this is two guys in a parking lot going at it, arguing with each other, and they go chest to chest. One guy takes off his shirt, the other guy takes off his shirt. One guy yells and screams, the other guy yells and screams. They go up and they bump chests, they push each other, they equalize each other. There's a commensurate response. And so the person initiating this absolutely relies upon it. But when you do not respond in the way they intended, it upsets the balance. It totally knocks them off their pins. So it's really important to keep that in mind if you want to give yourself leverage in any kind of a confrontation that you might have with somebody. Most little battles are not physical. They're usually verbal and emotional. But this is why it works. My mother used to say to me all the time, say less and don't let people necessarily know what you're always thinking. That's the problem with people who talk a lot, is they say everything they're thinking, and they're basically handing the other person all of their weapons to beat them over the head with, to hatchet them with. And so this is really good advice. It's better to say, especially if you don't really know what to say. You get in even more trouble when you don't know what to say and you keep talking. And I'm guilty of that. I've done that a lot. As I get older, I get better at it. But it's oftentimes been said, a foolish man can appear wise if he doesn't run his mouth. It's not exactly how it's said, but that's what's conveyed. And so you actually could appear wise by keeping your mouth shut, because it makes the other person think they might have a plan, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how to proceed. And so that's the way the Spartans were. Very, very short of words, but they expressed much. And we knew they could back it up from their history. Now, another way being laconic works for somebody is in comedy, in humor. And if you have ever had a question in your mind as to whether you were funny or not, or if you even had if you've had trouble having the ability to be funny, one of the ways to really come across as hilarious is to simply use less words. Now, here's what I mean by this. So you see this with the straight men of comedy. It could be a woman. It could be a woman. It's just an expression. But the straight men are the people who, they are the sounding board for the antagonist. The main character who is the source of where all the comedy flows forth from. And so, but oftentimes it takes two people for a really good act, for an act to be really good or to be really funny. You have one person who's saying all the funny things, but it's really made much more funny if you have a counterpart where somebody is not using very many words, and they convey what they're thinking or feeling through expressions on their face. Now, a really good example of this is The Honeymooners. Many people watch this, might be too young to remember what that is. The Honeymooners was a show back in the, 50s, I think it was back in the 50s. Jackie Gleason, Audrey Meadows, they played Ralph and Alice Cramden, and he was a bus driver, city bus driver with a bad temper, very impatient, and Audrey Meadows was the picture of tolerance and control. And Ralph Cramden would just go off on his wife, and he'd pace back and forth in his kitchen. He'd holler and scream, and he'd tell her, one of these days, Alice, to the moon. And he'd come across in a threatening way, and you knew he was a lot of air. But nowadays, I don't know if you get away with that in comedy, but back then you could. And he would just rant and rave. And the thing about Audrey Meadows' character, which was Alice Cramden, what she would do is she would stand there while he was ranting and raving. She would stand there with her arms folded, not even look at him, and she would look straight ahead, as if into the audience. Just look straight ahead and not say anything. And it was just the funniest thing, because it was so contrary to his actions that it got a huge response from the audience. Huge. And you see this a lot in comedy, where you don't really have to say funny things to be funny. You can just use your expressions. One of the funniest people I've ever known in my life was a guy who, by consensus, was hilarious, but he didn't talk much. He was like an actor in a silent movie. Not literally, but I mean, he behaved like an actor in a silent movie. Sometimes he did say funny things, but he was most funny when you would be talking to him and he'd just give you these looks. He would just be like... He had a way of moving his eyebrows like Dwayne Johnson, where he'd move one eyebrow up, and he would just do... He was like watching it was like watching a Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton movie. But it was so funny. And you couldn't... you had a hard time conveying to anybody else what was actually going on, because you couldn't mimic his expressions. He had it down. He knew how to be funny without saying much. Another example of this is the George Burns and Gracie Allen, my favorite comedy show of all time. Well, I was right there with Jack Benny. Gracie Allen was this dim-witted, but cute lovable wife of comedian George Burns. Now, in real life, she was not dim-witted. She was brilliant, and it's evidenced by the fact that they had such a long-running show. But their bit was she would say the most corny, outrageous, nonsensical things. I mean, didn't make any sense. She would take things literally. I mean, the things that she would say was so bizarre. And they were hilarious. But George Burns, he would stand there with his cigar, and he'd just smoke, and he'd look at her, and he would repeat what she said. He wouldn't really add too much to it, but he would repeat back what she said to her, and then he would stop, and he'd turn around. He wouldn't say anything. He'd just stop, put a cigar in his mouth, and he'd look into the camera. You know, he was one of the first ones to ever do that. He'd look into the camera, and it was like an aside. And then he might talk for a little bit. But he didn't say much. But he was hilarious. He built a career on that. So here's what I'm saying. If you want to upset the balance in a combative verbal situation, you can do it by saying little. You can express much. You actually put the ball in your court. You give yourself the leverage, the advantage, and then the other person doesn't know what to do. And a lot of times it will shut them down. If you want to be funny, if you want to be funnier, one of the ways to do it is simply say less. Use more expressions. Be like a Spartan. You can be like a Spartan in this regard. Physically, I can't be one, but I have a beard. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit there, but anyway. Laconic. To express much by saying little. Well, guys, that was my video for today. Just a word of the day kind of thing. So I hope you liked it. I hope it meant something to you. If it made sense to you, please share it with somebody. And if you liked it, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll be catching you next time. All right, bye-bye.